world 10,000 years from now? And is it possible to come up with a scientific understanding of the divine once we have grown and grown exponentially as we are? I don't know, but it leads you to thinking. Now, your phone calls are coming up next. Right after the break, we can talk about whatever you like. If you want to continue in the dialogue about some of these different phenomena that happen and your thoughts on whether or not the theory of this sort of gravitational bubble opening up works for you, let me know. This is where we are going to do it right after the break. Welcome back to Coast AM. And, you know, this is a wide range of topics that we've been dealing with. So I know it probably sparked a lot of different thoughts. I know it did for me. And it just, you know, the mind boggles at all the different possible things out there that are explainable by these pockets of gravitational anomalies opening up through these different dimensions. And the more we know about science, the more we know that that sort of thing is possible. That's the scary part. Well, let's go to the wild card line, Virginia. Michael, welcome to Coast AM.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on. How you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Just want to call in and let you know about an experience I had probably about 10 or 11 years ago when I was about 14 years old.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine lives on a horse farm, and, you know, I had spent, you know, several nights out here hanging out with them, you know, just doing what kids do. And one night in particular, it was probably about 2 or 3 in the morning. You know, nothing unusual. We were out along the fence of the dirt road they had over there, just petting some horses. And we heard an eerie buzzing noise. It almost sounded like a sizzle, like bacon sizzling. And, you know, it got louder and louder. And with the noise as it grew, an eerie blue light appeared. And it wasn't from a particular source. It was just mostly, you know, the whole area we were in was just lit up with this eerie blue light. And, you know, a few seconds passed by, and it seemed like the light grew smaller and focused just in on the area that we were in. And the buzzing noise was so intense, you know, it almost hurt my ears. And at that point, the horses jolted. I mean, they ran off as if something, you know, completely spooked them. You know, me and my buddy looked at each other, and at that point, the buzzing noise and the light just shot off. I don't know if it went up in the sky or if it just completely dissipated, but it was just gone in an instant. But we felt electricity surging through our bodies, and we were so freaked out, we just ran back to the house. And for hours, I mean, I felt the hair on my body standing up and electricity just, you know, for a couple hours after that. I couldn't even hardly sleep. It was the weirdest thing.
I mean, that's like right out of a Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
You know, well, so was it like a static electricity charge?
It did. It felt like it, but it grew and grew, and with the buzzing noise, the electricity, everything got so intense. And then at the same second, you know, the light was like it turned off, but the feeling of the electricity stayed with me for a good 2 hours.
Sort of tingly. Well, do you or your buddy ever sort of talk about that as the years go by, and does he remember it like you do?
I haven't really spoken to him in a while, so I'm not too sure. You know, I don't know what he's thinking about it, but I know for me it was just the weirdest thing. I mean, I can't explain it. And the blue light was something, I mean, it was like a fluorescent blue light, nothing like any ordinary, like, flashlight or light bulb. I mean, it was just the weirdest blue light. I can't even explain how it looked. Wow.
Anything else sort of strange happen in that area over the years, or is that just a one-off?
That's the only thing that's happened to me, and, you know, that's the only thing I've heard of in this area. I mean, it's something that I can't explain. You know, people I tell, you know, don't believe me. They think, you know, I don't even know. I can't even explain. It was just the weirdest feeling.
No, I mean, why would you make it up? You're just saying what happened.
Yeah. But, I mean, you know, you guys were talking earlier about, you know, bubbles in space, and I didn't know if it could, you know, you think about those things, and I've never really heard of it. I just started listening to the show, you know, a couple of weeks ago. Raised in a very strict Baptist home, so, you know, never had any really knowledge of, you know, any of these encounters with space, you know, the fabric of space, never even was taught about it in school. And, you know, you wonder if, you know, maybe you encountered something like that, somebody maybe trying to come into our space, you know, who knows what was going on?
Yeah. Well, Michael, I appreciate you calling because who knows? Maybe there's someone else who had sort of a similar experience and maybe, could shed some more light on it. Thanks for calling.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great night. Well, there you have it. I mean, the static charge to me is very interesting. I mean, the light too, but the fact that there's something entering in our time space, it seems logical, as Thomas was saying, that there would be this electromagnetic component to it. Very interesting. Right. Let's go to Redondo Beach, California, west of the Rockies. Joan, welcome to Coast AM.
Oh, hi. Thanks for accepting my call.
Sure.
I was just thinking, like when you walk down the street with a really cute puppy, and I notice like everybody puts their hand out to pet it, or their whole body goes down towards the animal. And I was just wondering, like, what kind of force is that? Because I noticed that if people like things, they go towards something. If they don't like it, they go back. So what force is that in the universe?
Well, I think there's the cuteness factor we have to bring into this scenario. But you're right. People subconsciously sort of lean forward or lean backward, don't they? Even when they're talking to people and even more subtle circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, is that electromagnetic force, or is it like what, dark matter? Could it be a force? Like all these forces, it is moving people. It's, so I was just wondering exactly what kind of force that is.
Well, don't you think it's more of a function of our own being that we're equipped with these sort of extrasensory sort of abilities that we're drawn to things, and it just doesn't even go through our waking mind. It's just sort of an automatic functional response that is tied into instinct and intuition, maybe. Yeah.
It just gets things to move. That's the thing. Like you either move like towards something or away from it, or tears come. That's like a force, and I just wonder where that comes from.
Yeah. Well, did you ever been drawn to something that you weren't sure quite why?
Yeah, even when I walk down the street, and I have if you have a cute little dog and you're walking down the street, like everybody even if they don't like say anything, they will put their hand out like towards the nose, or they'll put their hand out towards the fur, and they won't even say anything. Then they'll just keep walking, and I it's like, where is that? Where is that motion? Where is that? What, like, really something attracts you, like your head moves towards something that you think is cute.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking it actually moves us, physically moves us.
It's like they're taking over for a couple seconds there.
Yeah. It's almost like a force, and just like when you don't like something, you move back, and it's actually getting us to move, as if there's like an invisible magnet.
And you're right; it kind of seems like there's a gravitational pull there too.
Exactly, that's what I meant.
Well, that's a good observation, and you're absolutely right. It's just one of those things that sort of happened automatically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll give it some more thought. I appreciate your thoughts, Joan.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for calling in. Yeah. Well, I mean, I can tell you that there are things that we're drawn to for good reasons and bad, but it's just the way this body works. I mean, we are electrochemical beings. So who knows what kind of forces swirl around in our bodies, and with all that gray matter, it's even more a mystery. Let's go east of the Rockies. From Massachusetts, Steve, welcome to Coast AM.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for taking my call. Second-time caller, we're a relatively long-time listener.
Great.
The question I would love to have asked to your previous guest, great call, great topic, by the way. Not too long ago, well, chronologically speaking, back in the 1900s, there was a story about two women who went to Versailles, France, and they had an encounter, very strange encounter, actually, where they were walking along a path in the gardens, in the areas, sort of like in the back wall areas, and then it was very humid, it was very hot, the atmosphere around them became very heavy, they became very dizzy, and then they started walking down this path. They walked over a bridge, and then they walked into an area by the Petit Trianon in the area where Marie Antoinette used to be, and they saw people walking around in period clothing, and they thought it was some kind of a festival or something that was being performed at the time. It was back in the time of the French Revolution era clothing, and they saw Marie Antoinette sitting there, and they made eye contact. I don't know if they had any dialogue, and then they walked out of the area, and they couldn't believe what they experienced. And then when they tried to go back to the area, the wall that they passed through was bricked up. They managed to get around the wall and try to find a bridge that they crossed over the river, the lake, or whatever it was, and that was gone. And they did research on the area, and they found that there was an area there that was destroyed back in the time of the French Revolution. So essentially, these two women experienced a time slip. They walked into the past, and they had an experience, an encounter, and for years they kept quiet about this, but they wrote a story. In fact, Mystery on our local PBS station did a remake of it called Miss Morrison's Ghosts. And from what I understand, it's a well-documented event, and there have been other stories which I've seen on YouTube where people have been on road trips in France, and they've gone into inns and places and spoke to people, had encounters, then left with their cars and tried to get back to the same areas, and there was no inn. Photographs that they've taken have all been whited out. So
yeah.
What kind of experiences in time and space could lead people from our time to cross over the time barrier, so to speak, and have these encounters and either not get stuck there or... That's an amazing question, and I put it to you. I wish I could have put it to your previous guest, but
yeah.
I'll put it to you and see what you have to say about it. And thank you for taking my call.
Well, thanks, Steve. That's a great question, and this is exactly right. I mean, here are people who've got no reason to lie, and the story, it gets told time and time again. I can tell you the same story that happened at Fort Mifflin, out in near Philadelphia. It's a base, and they do tours there and things like that. And somebody that I know went there and talked to somebody in uniform. They thought they were having a reenactment. Talked to this person. The person, pointed or something. And then it turns out he wanted to, he talked to one of the people who worked at the fort. And he said, well, I was just directed here by that fellow in the uniform. And the person at the fort, I said, well, we don't have any people in uniform. And it turns out that's the same type of thing. We hear about this over and over again. So, it seems to me that that's more of a local feature, like Thomas was talking about, how in some places there is this weakening of the fabric of the walls between different dimensions. And in that place, you have more potential for these echoes, these earth memories to manifest. And when certain conditions are right, I think these things pop in because there's just too many people telling the same story. So, one piece of the puzzle is that, there are places that have the inherent potential to manifest these little blips and these echoes and memories because they're sort of embedded there. They're encoded there. And this is what Thomas was talking about. And I dare say if a place like that exists that you know about, that has that sort of weakened and that it's more of a crossover point, then that's a place of expanded potential. And maybe, who knows, other things can manifest there too. Food for thought. Let's keep going. We are on a roll. Let's go to Frank in Colorado Springs. Frank, welcome to Coast AM.
Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Oh, I've had so many of these experiences, it's unexplainable, but one of the ones that really kind of got me moving was I spent some time with somebody in Chicago, and he could literally transform his face right in front of me, and he did it 3 times, and it literally froze me solid. And then we got to talking about it, and he didn't know much more about it, what was going on, than I did. And so we had a long conversation, and what we kind of determined that, well, he was almost killed during the war in Korea. And anyway, he was like a walk-in. His spirit entered this body and took it over, and he could actually alter his physical appearance, but he didn't know who he was either, other than he had the experience that he was from another dimension or another planet, came here to Earth to accomplish some mission, which he didn't know what it was. So that was one thing that kind of keyed me into really getting interested in exploring all of these strange phenomena from, ghosts and spirits and
you saw this yourself. You saw this firsthand. And what did this?
Pardon me?
You saw this firsthand. His face change.
Yes. Yes.
And what did it change to? What did it change to?
Well, his eyes got real big. That was the one change, and it stunned me. But when I looked into his eyes, they were real angelic, and it was like he was here for some mission for the benefit of all mankind, and he didn't know what. And what we kind of concluded is that we're all here from a different dimension. We take on these physical bodies for our own evolution. In other words, if you look at the cosmos as one God or whatever, it's one thing, and we're all parts of it. We're all like each cell. We have trillions of cells in our mind, and each cell is a part of the mind. And if you look at each person as part of the cosmos or the entire holographic cosmos, we're each an individual ingredient, and we're part of the whole.
Part of a larger being.
Also,
yeah.
Pardon me?
Yeah, part of a larger being.
Yeah, it's like we're part of the hologram, and the mass is the energy in concentrated form, and it also contains all the information. So our brains, if we unlock our brains, we can actually tap into that information. We can tap into previous lives, other lives. We can connect one and one. And I've stood in front of people that I didn't know and could see their past and see their family, and they could do the same to me. So it's like we can connect, but we're programmed to be fear and in scarcity, and now we're getting ready to transform from fear and scarcity slaves to loving, gregarious, peaceful, harmonious entities that work together rather than work against one another.
Well, very well said. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, this is 2012. The veil is lifting here, and more people are becoming aware of just what you said, that there is unrealized potential in all of us. And that's what it's all about. It's a wide world out there. Take one step toward it, and it'll take 2 steps toward you, I guarantee. My name is Rob Simone. You're listening to Coast AM. More phone calls after the break. Stay tuned. Yeah, thank you. Welcome back to the program, Coast to Coast AM. And it's open lines. Anything goes. And we're talking about different phenomenon. Our first hour guest was talking about a theory and the idea that a scientific sort of manifestation of a gravitational bubble that can appear, even slightly, would warp space-time enough to account for a lot of different phenomenon. And it kind of rung a bell in my mind because people started calling in, and there was a fellow said he and his wife were sitting on the couch and they just stopped talking for 15 minutes, which was very unusual for them. And this came out back in March. Japanese researchers have invented a handheld speech jamming gadget that can painlessly force people into silence. Katsukata Kirihara of the National Institute of Advanced Industrial Science and Technology developed a portable speech jammer gun that can silence people from more than 30 meters away. They say it works, and regardless of who they're doing it on, and it's not it's non-lethal. It's not painful. Some people just lose the ability to speak. Now, the reason I say this is because the technology is going to a point where we are starting to explain these paranormal, and we're creeping up to the point where we can create our own paranormal explanations and phenomena scientifically. So we got to remember we're just on the peak of discovery here. So this is why everything is so exciting and so crazy and confusing too. But we're getting through it together. This is where we're going to take your phone calls in just a minute, right after the break. Welcome back to Coast AM. We're going to jump back into open lines. But first, just to give you an idea about how at the very infancy we are as a civilization. 3 decades ago, we launched the Voyager probe. And just now, it's just leaving the solar system. It's about 11 billion miles away from the sun right now. And this is the first and furthest object that we have hurled into interstellar space. It's entering what they call the stagnation zone, an area very close to the edge of the solar system. And it's still looking back. It's still working somehow. But it is going. I mean, that's like a baby's first step when it comes to a civilization that's capable of going to Mars and beyond. So we still don't know what's out there. In fact, scientists were surprised where Voyager was because they didn't expect it to be where it ended up. In other words, even the Newtonian laws, the stuff that's been around and everyone agreed upon, somehow failed them because their calculations turned out to be not correct, and it was in a different place in space than it should have been. So anything is up for grabs here. Let's go back to the phones. It is Friday night. Let's go to Fresno, California. Ron, first time caller line. Welcome to Coast AM.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How you?
Oh, not too bad. Boy, I tell you what, my mom would have liked one of those shut-your-mouth devices. Anyways, yeah, I was just thinking about an experience I had. I live right around the corner from this bar, and I'd go in there occasionally and play darts. Anyways, I had to get up early that day, the next morning, so I went in there and had about 3 drinks, decided to come home, came home, and there's a block light fence between, the building next door and my house. And it's just right around the corner from the bar. Okay. Anyways, I'm walking down. I get to the side of the house, the block light wall, and that was it. I woke up the next morning about 5 hours later with my shirt torn in 2 places, my darts all over the place. And so I thought, what the heck is this? So anyways, I got a shower outside, a bathroom outside, and a bathroom inside the house. So I shower outside. So I go in the house, grab my towel and everything. I go in here, jump in the shower. So I'm lathering up and everything. And I go to lather up my arm on my shoulder, and I look, and it's stinging, just like a hot needle poking me. There's a little red spot there. I thought, well, what's that all about? So anyways, I hurry up, get out of the shower, and I'm walking towards the house. And this is a beautiful, beautiful morning, not a cloud in the sky. And I look up, and here's this cloud that it looks really close, but yet you can tell it's thousands of miles away. And it's just hanging there, and it kind of looks like a jellyfish when you see the top and the bottom of a jellyfish, the picture, like tentacles hanging down.
Sure.
And I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, well, what's that all about? So I got a towel on. I walk all the way out to the street staring at this thing because, a lot of times here they'll send off Minuteman missiles and blow them up and stuff, and you'll see trails to them. Well, there's no trails to this. And so I'm just standing there like an idiot out there in the towel, and I look at it, and I said, oh, whatever. So anyways, I go back in the house, go to work, and my boss is coming, and I no more than said two things. He said, "What was it? What was it?" I don't know. What was it? But anyways, the whole story was there's 5 hours about being out there, not remembering nothing. My shirt all tore up, and this red thing on my shoulder that stayed there for 1 week and burnt anytime I touched it.
Was it like a puncture wound?
Yeah, like a bee sting or something.
And how long ago was this?
This is back in '96.
Okay. And so your boss saw this thing too, right?
Right.
So
we researched it. No Minuteman missiles or anything.
Yeah. What kind of cloud was it? What did it look like?
Just one of the white ones, just the ones you see in the summer.
But it was what?
But yet it didn't look like a cloud. It was just kind of streaming down like tentacles.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Pretty wild. And that's the only unusual thing that's happened to you since?
Well, no, I had one other unusual experience.
Yeah.
Now, this was about 8 years ago during Christmas. And I'm walking down an indoor mall, and I mean, it's crowded about 2 weeks before Christmas. Now I'm hurrying through there trying to find a gift, and all of a sudden, I get this weird feeling coming over me. And so I just stop, and I start scanning the crowd and looking, and all of a sudden I see this guy standing alone. He looked about a foot taller, it seemed, than anybody else. And I caught him at 3/4 of a turn. And he was scanning, just turning really slowly, I watched him all this way, just staring at him. And when our eyes met, I've been in some bad predicaments. I've had a gun put to my head and stuff. Pretty scary stuff. This guy turned around. When our eyes met, all of a sudden, time froze. It's like people stopped, it seemed like. And when our eyes met, I had never felt anything so scary in my life. I mean, like I said, I've been in some bad predicaments, and I was scared. But I was terrified. My blood actually ran cold. I don't know what he was, who he was, what he was doing, but I felt nothing but pure evil from this person.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty scary.
Do you think maybe that you had some sort of abduction experience before, and that this guy was one of those men in black that people describe the same types of reactions to?
Well, he wasn't dressed in black, and he looked pretty normal, but
well, I mean,
it was pretty scary. I just thought, and this guy had to feel my presence for him to stop and be scanning the crowd.
Right.
And so, what was he feeling from me? Besides, he probably knew I was terrified after I seen him.
Right.
But I tell you what, I turned and I walked as fast as I could out of there.
Yeah, bet you did. Well, I mean, these men in black, they come in all, it's kind of a catch-all phrase.
Right.
But they're people who are not quite right, and people have very strong reactions to them. And it sounds like, this kind of fits into that category. And, considering this very profound abduction-type experiences, maybe, I don't know, maybe this guy was looking at you or something and checking up on you.
I don't know, but I tell you what, it's the most scared I've ever been. I'll never forget the feeling.
Yeah, well, that's chilling. Well, Ron, appreciate the call. Thanks so much for calling.
All right, well, thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. Somebody called last hour about walk-ins, and I've heard these stories too from many different people about just all of a sudden, they're just walking and they're directed to do things, and there's so many aspects of this phenomenon. It's hard to say. If this is something that should happen in this world, that's happened for ages, and maybe it's random. Who knows? Maybe these people that these things happen to will never fully understand why they happen to them. And if you're looking for answers, sometimes you just don't get them. Sometimes it's just part of this fabric, of life that we weave, and you have to sort of make your own peace with it. Let's go to the wild card line. Jonathan from Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Rob. How's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, first time. Right. It's an interesting show, and I have two questions to ask you. Maybe you can help me out here.
Sure.
Now, the question of UFOs, why is it, because I don't know, why is it that everyone seems to think that there's intelligence out there that's more intelligent than ourselves? You see on the sci-fi shows, and even people who mention seeing UFOs and extraterrestrials and so forth, they're always more intelligent than us. Because I'm thinking there's a strong possibility that we may be the more intelligent beings. If there are other beings, I feel like that we may be the most intelligent beings throughout the universe. And, there may be other beings somewhere trying to figure out who we are. And then the second...
Yeah, let's tackle that one first.
Okay.
Because, it could be that we're the most spiritual beings in this part of the galaxy, or galaxy. And maybe there's other beings out there that are more intelligent or less intelligent, but they don't have the spiritual ability to reincarnate or do all the other things that we can do.
Okay.
Maybe we're endowed with gifts that is not really related to intelligence. But you're right. Why is it the assumption, this is probably what you're thinking, that these beings are always far more advanced, right? That's like, it's always the given assumption.
Yeah, they're the spacecrafts that, it's, even the spacecrafts that they're in are far more advanced than ours, and, and I'm thinking, how come nobody says that we may be the more intelligent beings? But anyway, here's but that's okay, I'll use that as food for thought there.
Okay.
Here's the second question. With Area 51, I have a problem believing that if there are extraterrestrials and other beings that come, that they would only communicate with our men and women in Area 51. It's kind of like I just can't see them making a deal like the people, the personnel at Area 51, like, in so many words, saying, well, look, just deal with us. Just communicate with us. Don't communicate with anyone else over the face of the earth. Some people have already seen you. Some people, you guys slipped. Just deal with us and communicate with us. I think that these beings would be all over, communicating with everyone. And the heck with what the people at Area 51 say. We're going to let people know that we're here, all over the earth, from China to the United States. I just can't see. And if they are communicating, what in the world are they saying? I mean, these are intelligent beings. I feel like they would say, well, what is it? I mean, why do you just want us to talk to you? I mean. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems as though that the military has this sort of all locked up. The phenomenon, right? And the technology and everything. But that might not be the case. I mean, there are a lot of people who claim to be in touch and have been in touch throughout the ages. And anytime you hear of someone channeling or something, or divining something, or any kind of creator mythology, from the Anastasies to the Shinto in Japan, they all talk about these creator gods coming down from outer space, giving them knowledge.
I heard, and I was going to try to be brief, but I'm not saying there's always doubt. But when I heard my mother, who's a church-going woman, say that she saw something in the sky that had lights all around it, and I mean, this is a woman who would never say anything like this.
All right, sir.
She said it had lights all around it, and it was turning very slowly. And she just stood and watched it, and it just went over the houses. And she said, "You missed it." And I'm standing there. I'm 47 now, but at the time, I guess I was about 19. And I'm asking her, "What did it look like?" And she said, "Son, it just had lights all around it, all under it, and it was moving real slow. And it just went right over the houses over there." I took off on my bike. I'm trying to find this thing. But I knew she had seen something. This church-going woman, would never say something like that were it not true.
Sure.
But I heard someone say, and he was a scientist, he claims, and maybe you've heard this theory before, but he said the light that you see in the sky, he said they're from the Earth because the Earth hasn't settled. He said that there's some kind of magnetic force that are still drawing electrodes and magnetic forces from the sky, and you'll see them light up from time to time. But his theory was that the Earth hasn't settled. You know, it's only a certain billion years old, but it still hasn't settled. So you'll see lights in the sky from time to time. And he said people may mistake those for UFOs. You ever heard of that before?
Well, yeah, there's all kinds of visual phenomenon that's manifested by the combination of the Earth and the sky and the atmosphere. So that's a pretty big, umbrella for all these sightings to fit underneath. They don't all necessarily have to come, from somewhere else. But I appreciate your call, and we're going to get some more thoughts on that.
Okay, well, thanks.
Thanks so much. Again, people think this all the time, that the government has this all locked down, or these things only talk to certain people. And the truth of the matter is, I think when you look at this phenomenon, you'll see that there's all kinds of activity, and I don't think there's any one group of extra dimensionals or extraterrestrials that have a one plan for contact. I think we're just bombarded with such a staggering variety. Sometimes they're here and they could disappear. Sometimes they've always been here, of different influences and intelligences. That's why we see this completely, random and massive variety of contacts and information. And all kinds of people do get contacted. These ships are crashing, they're coming, they're here, they're written into our folklore. So when you try to really put this thing in a black and white context, it rarely works. And who knows what the government knows. But that doesn't have to stop us from moving forward and hoping that the truth of this ongoing contact will come to light in a way in which that makes sense. And I also think that their mission is not necessarily just to jump right in and say, here we are. I think there's so many different paradigms that we can't even wrap our head around, that we shouldn't be surprised when it doesn't fit into the easy scenario, because we have to think much broader and understand that this thing it's not going to fit into anything that we've thought about or heard about. I mean, we literally have a ways to go before we can understand what is going on. Our place in the universe is still a highly contestable subject. What are we doing? Where did we come from? All that stuff. We're still trying to get the basics here. Let's go to the wild card line. Jerry in Utah. How are you?
Good morning, Rob. I want to talk about one thing, and I'll get that.
Well, hold on. You know what? Let me hold you over. We're just above the break, and I'm going to put you on hold. Don't go anywhere. And we come back, we're going to jump right back in to the phone calls. You're listening to Coast to Coast AM. This is Friday night. Open lines. Coming right back after the break. Stay tuned. Yeah, welcome back to Coast AM. And, it's been one of those nights. It's Friday the 13th, and we're just rolling with it. We're talking about the weird, strange things that happen, why they happen. And maybe there is an explanation after all. I certainly think so. I think we're getting there. I think the parade goes in one direction, and that is to ultimately understand why all these things happen, and to get rid of the superstition and some of the old ways, but keep the good part about the old ways that binds us. Because after all, we come from a place of ritual and from community and from villages, and they're founded on these ideals that are sunk to the very core of our being. But that's not going to stop us from shedding the crushing yoke of fundamentalism. and moving on to a larger understanding. And that is a difficult transition for some. Some people wrestle and cling to certain ideas and because it sustains them. And other people can't wait for this, golden age, this new age to spring upon us. So some people are in fast forward mode and some people are, in reverse. It takes all kinds, though, to make the pages of life turn over. And we had somebody on hold. So let's just jump back into that. And it was, who was it? Line 1, yeah, wildcard line. Jerry from Provo. Welcome back.
Thank you, Rob, for holding me over till the top there and not trying to force me in.
No, I just got so engrossed in the conversation. So what's on your mind?
Well, one thing, the last caller, let me clear one thing up for him.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of our military or Area 51, as he put it, dictating what the UFO people do, for a lack of a better word. It's a matter of that's what they want. They found a cohort on this planet to help them promote what they want to do. So basically, I've always looked at it as if UFOs want to be known, they just land on the White House lawn, and who's going to stop them? Right?
Well, sometimes they do. Look at the Phoenix Lights. There are all kinds of mass sightings.
Oh, no, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. It's their plan. It's not our plan. We're just willing dupes. And as far as you were saying, all these other sightings that have come over the ages, well, it slipped. They got seen, but they got this misinformation bureaucracy to cover it for them.
There you go.
So I think they'll clear that up for them. But what I had told Tommy I wanted to talk about,
yeah,
and this is something I've really wanted to talk about for a long time. You got to understand, I'm one of the most broad-minded, open-minded people. I'm one of these guys that can sit back and listen to everything, and I can put it up in the sky like a jigsaw puzzle. And I put this piece there and that piece there, and all of a sudden, oh, wow, that piece connects with this piece.
Okay.
And I kind of keep an open mind on everything.
Great.
It doesn't mean I believe everything. It's mean that I store as much information as I can to come out with an ultimate conclusion.
All right.
Now, recently, what's really been bugging me is this whole idea of a one universe, single consciousness. We're all connected and everything else. I can agree with that. We are all connected through God. You have George has had some great guests on, and the rest of you had. And, one woman comes to mind. She had a near-death experience, and now she does healing.
Okay.
Remote healing.
Sure.
And it was really great. And she talks about it's all about love, and it's all about, furthering brotherhood and everything else. And I think she truly believes it, and it's there. And there's so many gifts that I keep hearing, it's all this one consciousness, and this is love. And it's basically the New Age religion. And my litmus test to all of this is I want to hear Jesus Christ's name mentioned.
Oh, he does, though. This is not a religious show, but I know that...
No. I'm not faulting you. No, I think it's great. I'm saying my litmus test for me and what I believe that if they're truthful or if it's for good or bad. Like this woman who does the remote healing. I think she totally believes it. I think she's doing a great thing, but I never heard the name Jesus. See, I'm not trying to go on a religious rant here or anything like that.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to say is that if you actually understand the Bible and read the Bible and understand what it says, this is all predicted. You have false prophets in the end days that will tell who can go against brotherhood and loving and this and that? The problem is the devil, if you understand the Bible, devil, Lucifer, whatever, He's a great deceptor. He can make these people believe that what they're saying is for the good of mankind, when maybe it isn't. And again, like I said, I don't want to go on a big religious...
No, but you're saying this, for what rings true for you, is this context and how it relates to the Bible, and that's perfectly understandable. Everyone has that filter, and everyone has their own litmus test.
Well, and I just it's I don't know how to put it into words. But
well, I mean, the things we talk about are some of the most esoteric things that you're going to hear on radio. That's why the show is so phenomenal, because it deals with these things. And you're right, it touches at the very core of our consciousness, and to get that stuff out, in terms, sometimes is not the easiest thing in the world.
Well, yeah, I guess what my point is, Rob, is that, like the guest you had tonight, and like the guest I was talking about earlier, and so many others, that will go into this, that if people would, and again, I don't want to go on a religious rant, and try to convert people, because that's ridiculous. You're just not going to.
That's not what we're here for. But the bottom,
you actually read the Bible.
The bottom line is that if you read the Bible,
that it's there. It already tells you that it's there. That yes, this is a one universe. We are one consciousness. It's all linked into Jesus. If you don't believe that Jesus is your Savior, coming from the other side.
All right. Well, Jerry, I appreciate it.
Rob, thank you for having the patience with me to talk to me about that.
I'm glad you got it out there, and I do appreciate where you're coming from. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I do appreciate you also on your comments on the Area 51, too. When it comes to these mass sightings, and he brings up a good point, there have been mass sightings. Phoenix Lights and the one at the Belgium Flap in Mexico City. They had these extraordinary displays. So these things happen all the time. And you got to remember, this is United States of amnesia, according to Gore Vidal. And the United States is very unusual when it comes to the UFO phenomenon, simply because, and this is what I like to talk about, is that we had a traumatic event happen to us. Roswell was a traumatic event. There was this crash, and it not only crashed into our soil, it crashed into the collective psyche of the United States. And the first reports out of Roswell was the Army said, yeah, we found a saucer. Saucer landed, saucer recovered. But then the Cold War mentality took over. And it's been locked away. Just like a traumatic event happens, your mind reacts and makes you forget about it, like a concussion. You suppress it. So we have this cognitive dissonance going on. We have this kind of, Americans are saying, well, on the one hand, we do believe because we know it's true. And on the other hand, the government's telling us it's not true. And when you have this disconnect, that's why there's this crazy dysfunction. Now, the reason I say all that is because other countries didn't go through that. France and Russia and, Chile, they never had this event happen that twisted them all up inside. So they experience this phenomenon in a much different way. Believe me, just go traveling around and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Let's jump back in the phones. They are buzzing. Let's see. Let's go to, first-time caller line. Let's get another first-timer on here. Friday the 13th from Humboldt, California. Joe, welcome to Coast to Coast AM.
Hey, how's it going? First-time caller, long-time listener.
Welcome.
I was trying to maybe put a little bit on your the guy who spoke first in the first hour and second hour about the balls of light.
Yeah.
There was an anthropologist back in the late 60s, early 70s, wrote a series of books called The Yaqui Way of Knowledge, Carlos Castaneda.
Yeah, of course.
And he spoke about Don Juan telling him during his learning about all the sorcery about every human being is born with a ball of light that is in their stomach that has these luminous fibers that make us up as a person. And as a person either gets stronger spiritually or weaker, that ball of light grows or diminishes. And as he spoke through the books, he actually talked about how he could, Don Juan, the sorcerer who was teaching the anthropologist, he said, I can actually see these balls of light in people, he could actually move through different dimensions. And this is a pretty accredited anthropologist. And to this day, I mean, I read these books about 10 years ago. I still can't figure out if he was telling the truth, but I mean, I've actually seen a glowing orb for over 5 minutes before, and it was happened to be on an Indian reservation in Northern California. And I mean, Indian people, they actually are pretty in touch with, you know, with the world the way it was, and I think they might have been on to something.
Joe, thanks for bringing that, you know, nugget back around from Carlos Castaneda. I think so many people have those old paperbacks that are sitting up in their attics.
Yeah, my dad actually gave them to me. He said, you need to read these.
Exactly. Me too. You know, the older brother hands them down. But don't you think, though, that maybe not even without having the ability to see them, but don't you think people literally have a light in them? And some people just radiate and glow, and that could be kind of what they're talking about with this ball of light inside of people, and whether it gets dimmer or whether it gets brighter?
Yeah, I really do believe, because, I mean, there's certain people that, you know, like one of your earlier callers was saying about the dog, how they're just attracted. I think that's just a natural. I think certain individuals in this world are just naturally, they have a good spiritual, you know, sense to them or something, and their ball of energy is so massive, you can't help but be drawn to these people.
And sometimes somebody will walk into a room, they just light it up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Joe, great one.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for calling. That's Carlos Castaneda. Yeah, remember those books? I remember very little of them, but you start to remember more. I remember that they used to do, of course, these peyote rituals, and so Don Juan said to his Padawan, his learner, he says, "No, you only take the peyote that presents itself in your path. So you never go looking to buy things to do ceremony with, or to experience with. You have to wait for it to present itself right in front of you. So go walk to the desert, and if you come upon it, great. If not, keep walking." Quick break, coming right back with your phone calls. Welcome back to Coast to Coast AM, and we're talking about phenomenal things. I know that Mike has been hanging on for a long time, east of the Rockies from Hancock, Wisconsin. Mike, welcome to Coast to Coast AM.
Hey, no problem, Rob. Been listening to you guys for 3 years. Vietnam vet, 60 years old. I've learned so much stuff in the last 3 years from you guys, George and John and Tommy. I gotta give my hats off to Tom, because he's a very nice gentleman.
He is.
Semper Fi. I always told George that when I call him. But anyway, it's a very good show tonight. What I called was about in 1975. We had left Aberdeen, Maryland, and we were on our way to Phoenix, Arizona, and we were going through Gettysburg, and we were going through the battlefield, and it was probably about 11:30, maybe 20 after 11, and the other guy that was driving, I looked over to the battlefield, and the soldiers were there. The guys were there, walking, angry. It was cold. It was in the fall, but I said, let's go downtown. So we went downtown to Gettysburg, and there's brick streets and stuff there. But it was so quiet, but there was a party going on. It was like all the soldiers, all the people were there, but there was nothing. There was nothing there. It was just a different world. I've held this in for so long,
yeah.
1975, and I always want to tell George about this.
Like a window sort of opened up to the past?
It was, man. I'm telling you, man. When I looked, and I've been through Antietam, the battlefields and stuff, but when I looked at Gettysburg, the battlefield, those soldiers were there, walking.
Yeah, and this is something that again we hear over and over again, isn't it? I mean, this is just one of those.
It just blew me away.
Yeah,
I didn't know. I said, Don, we got to get out of here.
And you could see it once and never see it again.
Never,
yeah.
And there's so much stuff I've seen and witnessed in my life, and I'm a Vietnam vet, disabled vet, and it just the things that go on and the things we touch on this show. You guys are just phenomenal. I can't. I tell everybody about Coast to Coast.
No, I appreciate
and
that.
We're a little town of 400 people.
Out in Hancock.
And I've been on this show many times.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I mean, this is what it's all about. I mean, it's people like you that come forward and say, hey, there's something amazing going on, and I want to tell people about it because, you know, this is what life's all about. It's about, you know.
Yeah, and listen to everybody, you know. Sure, I mean, you can't listen to everybody all the time because everybody, you know, you got to give everybody a chance to get on and talk because we won't know if nobody says anything.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I'm going to get off of here and just listen to the show. And I
appreciate it.
Appreciate talking to you, Rob. This is the first time I've ever talked to you, but
God bless, Mike. I hope we talk some more. Be well. Well, you know what? We got to go back to the Skype line. I mean, Skype has been hanging on for a long time. Tony in Virginia, welcome to Coast AM.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad you can hear me.
Sure. You sound pretty good.
Oh, good. Good. It's a fairly new computer. I'm still working out some of the tweaks in it, so I'm glad to hear that I've got audio settings good. Do I have time to ask you a question and tell you a story?
Well, let's start with the story.
Okay. Well, the story's kind of follows along with what we was talking about tonight. About in 96, 97 year, I went to a small Bible college in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I met this girl there that we were very, we weren't boyfriend, girlfriend. We were just, you know, close, you know, whether it was close, not quite boyfriend, girlfriend,
okay.
But,
yeah.
you know, one of those close friendships. And we were really close. We seemed to knew each other without even knowing each other. You know, the kind of relationship we had. Well, one night we had we were just out on campus, just walking around and talking and doing what we normally do. You know, on a weekend.
Okay.
And she said just out of the blue, "Well, I'm gonna go dream hopping tonight." And I looked at her and I'm like, "What?" And her name was Christy. And if she's listening, she probably knows what I'm talking about.
Okay.
She said, "Well, I'm going to go dream hopping tonight." And I said, "Do what?" And she said, "Yeah, I want to go hopping around people's dreams on the campus. When I go to sleep tonight, I have the ability to go into people's dreams and see what they're dreaming about."
Well, hold it right there, Tony. I'm going to put you on hold because we're just up at the break. But I want to hear about this. I want to hear about this dream hopping because you know what? That might be fun. I might want to try that if it's not dangerous. You're listening to Coast AM. My name is Rob Simone. Stay tuned. We're coming right back after the break. Welcome back to the program. This is Open Lines, Friday the 13th. Having a lot of fun, and all of a sudden, I look at the clock, and the show is nearly gone. I don't believe it. But right before the break, we were talking to Tony in Virginia, and he was telling us about his girlfriend who invited him out of the blue to go dream hopping. And, Tony, what did you do?
Well, I kind of looked at her, and I kind of said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" She said, like I said, "Well, I have the ability to go in people's dreams and see what they're dreaming about, and sometimes I can affect them." And I just kind of looked at her, and, you know, at the time I kind of was into that kind of thing because I'm a little bit into paranormal, even more so now, but at the time I was kind of into it. And playing Mr. Skeptical just to see if she was, you know, being honest or not, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, Christy, tonight when you go to sleep, you go into my dream, and you don't tell me you're there. And tomorrow, when we see each other, or when we see each other the next day, you tell me something from my dream, something about me that I have never told you about before in my life." And this was our first semester, so, you know, I'm sure I told her about a lot of stuff, but she said, "Okay, I'll do that." Well, anyway, I went back to my room and went to sleep, and sure enough, there she was. You know, I didn't tell her that I even noticed her in my dream. In the dream, I didn't even tell her.
Okay.
But you know, I just thought, oh well, she's in my dream because, you know, I see her practically every day here on campus.
Yeah, you were thinking about her.
And I was just thinking about her, and a few other kids from the college too. And so I thought, well, that's why she's in my dream. That explains that.
Sure.
Well, the next day I saw her, and I was expecting something, and she said, I said, well, what do you got to tell me? And she said, your Aunt Raynell, she calls you her sugar man.
That's pretty.
And my jaw dropped. My jaw dropped.
Yeah.
I had never told her about my Aunt Raynell before.
And that doesn't sound like something you'd tell someone straight away. I mean, yeah.
And I had never told her that my Aunt Raynell used to call me her sugar man.
You probably didn't tell anybody, but so how did she find out?
Well, I dreamt about that in my dream. I dreamt about my Aunt Raynell and me, going home for a visit at college, and I went home, and that was one of the things my Aunt Raynell told me. Like, she always used to tell me, Tony, you're my sugar man.
Well, how did she come into your dream like that? Did she ever tell you how she did it?
And she just said that she always had the ability to go into other people's dreams, and after that, I said, you know what? I believe it.
She had a gift. Yeah, she just had this ability that she didn't learn, maybe, huh?
And I know it's probably true, because I know I've heard through other shows that George has had, and Ian and you and a few other people, that shared dreams can be a common thing. People can come into dreams, and but when she said your Aunt Raynell calls you her sugar man, I'm just like,
Proof positive. Yeah, that's an intimate detail. Well, Tony, I appreciate the call. I've never heard that before.
Well, I have a question for you.
Oh yeah, sure.
I have a follow-up question.
Sure, go ahead.
The last time we talked was the last time you was on, and I'm the ham radio operator that talked to you about talking on the single sideband.
Yes, I remember.
You had that guest on who recorded the weird sound from 4 hertz. Was it 4 hertz?
I don't remember the frequency. What they did was they recorded this radio frequency and manipulated it so it would be an audio file, and we played that on the air.
Yes, we played it on, and you played it on the air.
Yeah.
Who was that, and was there any follow up to what I asked about?
I have not heard anything from that show, and because the reason why I played that was so people like yourself maybe could identify it, because we were trying to figure out what was it HARP, and what was it had to do about it had tied into the chemtrail phenomenon. And no, we have not heard, but I'll tell you what I will do. I will grab a hold of that file, and next time I'm on the air, I'll try and get around to playing that again.
Well, who was that guest? I forgot his name.
Was that Clifford Carnicom?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Clifford.
There you go. Well, I appreciate the call, Tony. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time, and I appreciate you. I'm going to write that down right now to replay that sometime. It was a very cool little clip there. Well, let's keep going, shall we? No, I tell you what. A lot of phone calls. Got to take the quick break. Come right back after this. And welcome back to Coast AM. We're in open phone lines here, Friday the 13th, and let's go right back at it. I mean, we're on a roll here. Let's go to Wildcard Line, Birmingham, Alabama. Michael, welcome to the program.
Hey, how are we doing?
All righty. How you?
So, now, I don't want to misdirect your current talk show or anything like that, but I want to take a real quick look at the application of faith with all of with what pretty much applies to anything, but mostly not the last caller, but the majority of your callers have been putting some application of faith towards sightings or things that they've seen or friends have seen or things that friends have said.
Okay.
And if you take a look into it, and I take it as a look in the black and white kind of thing.
All right.
I'm very educated. I'm not going to say my belief or anything like that, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I will lay a disclaimer out for believers to say that God has empowered me with the gift of thought to raise the question of this. They reference many things, and I will reference things, but not now, but in the Bible that will to say Jesus did, Jesus said, this is so, and they try to apply it to these things that they have seen. Well, let's take a look at the black and white. Let's look at the facts. Your grandmother, your sister, your brother, whoever saw this miraculous event. I saw an alien. I was abducted. I was this. I was that. That is fact. It was seen. It has been seen. How are we going to apply the Bible to that? And let's take it. And my question is this: how old is bureaucracy? Because, and I'm not a doubter. I'm not going to doubt or punch holes in belief or the Bible or Jesus or anything. I'm going to say,
how old is?
Yeah, how old is bureaucracy?
As long as you have more than a few people deciding something.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, that's the point. That's all we got to go with that. And in the Bible, it does say, 2 or more people, et cetera, et cetera. Okay?
Sure.
We all know about that.
Okay.
Let's continue with it. Now let's put a synopsis and say 50 senators write a doctrine, and there's 50 different doctrines, and the president looks at these 50 doctrines, and he says these 35 doctrines won't do, but I will take these 15 doctrines.
Okay.
And I'm going to manipulate them how I would like to.
Okay.
And then we'll say this is the main doctrine.
Okay.
Now let's go back and look at the application of the Bible. How many actual books of the Bible that we know of?
Right.
Not including the ones that we don't know
There's
of.
Gospels that didn't make it, according to the Council of Nicaea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the writing, it is of man and then manipulated by man to become what. So it's basically a book of ideals fit for someone to be susceptible to them. Don't be so naive. Be strong in your faith. Be strong as a Christian, and use your freaking brain that God gave you, and look at the entire picture. If anything you take from the Bible, it's a general guidebook. If you take anything from it, take the 10 basic things. Don't kill. Don't murder. Don't covet. The 10 commandments, take it as a basic. The rest of it is for your interpretation and the application of life as you see it, and that's great. I'm not going to discount any previous callers.
Okay, well that's good general advice. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's you can't. I mean, I'm not going to say you can't, but I think it may be considered ignorant to some to take and say, well, Jesus says that this, and therefore I should believe this about a light I saw in the sky. No. If you saw a light in the sky, you saw a light in the sky. Let's take the facts of what could have caused that light, and it could have been extraterrestrial. Yeah, sure. There are other people. There are other planets. There are millions of other stars. God is a very complex being, of course. He let us have the Bible to let us interpret it.
So what you're saying is it's important to have the faith and understanding, but also to be open and not common sense, and let yourself think through things on your own, and not just go by what everybody else is saying to go by.
Exactly. Don't get bogged down.
Yeah.
Do not bog yourself down by these things. That's why we're getting stuck with all the decisions and everything that's going on in the real world.
Sure.
Today.
Well, Michael, it's good to hear, but I mean that's kind of what we talk about quite a bit is trying to push the aperture of your mind open just a little bit further. That's what Coast has been doing for a long time. But hey, nice to hear. I appreciate you calling in. You know what? I got to go to Tucson, Arizona. They've been waiting a long time. Let's go to Bing. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for inviting me into your living room there, Rob.
Happy to have you. What's on your mind?
Well, they talk about these PowerPoints and such on the earth. I was in an area with one of my saddle pedals in this four-wheel drive, and we went to this cliff dwelling that I know about. It's roughly 150 feet off the deck, and my partner went up there. Like I said, it's a neat place. And then coming from the southeast, I looked down a canyon. My Jack Russell, he was barking and growling, just low, what's that? And I saw this Native American Indian in a magnificent buckskin carrying a lance or a spear and a bow. I raised both palms up, and because I was fixing supper, and he was just nosing around the cliff dwelling, and it looks like it's been picked over. And this is an area where the Singwa Indians had lived roughly 6,000 years ago, plus or minus 2,000 years. And he appeared to be somewhere 20s, 30-ish, 5'10". And then he barked, and I looked down for a minute, and this individual was gone. He came down, I was fixing steaks and hash browns. And he had a excellent spotting scope, reflective spotting scope, about 2 feet long. And, I said, old Ryan's coming up. We were looking at that. I was sleeping in the back of the truck, and he's sleeping in the cab. And I look, and I see this Native American Indian looking through our telescope, looking at Orion.
Huh.
And I said, Kevin, that wasn't you looking through the scope last night? Hell no, I went to bed early. He went to bed about 10, and there he was, and where I live, there's matapes and stuff. There's one 6 feet long with 3 different size holes. You see the one where the little girls worked, where the daughter worked, and where grandma worked. It was about 10 inches deep. They're big rock, 6 feet long, quite comfortable for a 6-footer like me to lay on. And it was a truly, magnificent experience. And this is north of the Kirshner Caverns,
okay.
And there's a stream coming from the east,
right.
and it went right underground. It was a inch or two stream, about 6 feet wide, and it disappeared underground. So I said, hey, maybe there's a connection to the, Kirshner Caverns. I don't know.
Oh, well, it's clear as day. So do you think that Indian was really there, or was it sort of an echo?
I truly believe it was there. Okay. I wasn't boozed up. I wasn't peyoted up,
yeah.
As in the previous thing. And I saw him twice, and you raised both arms. Hey, I got no weapons. I just got a little 20-pounder Jack Russell, and I was cooking supper, and he couldn't see him coming down from the cliff dwelling because it's like a 50 or 60 degree angle to get up to it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was magnificent scene. Yeah. And
well, Bing, what you saw was something special, and maybe it was something.
It was one of these PowerPoints like in the Sedona area or whatever, but.
And for whatever reason, it was something for you to see. And
do you remember the big freeze a year ago, February?
Oh, of which area?
In the Arizona, New Mexico area, it got down to 8 degrees like the first week of last February.
Okay.
No, a year ago, last February.
Okay, last February.
And I'm coming off the mountain in my truck and, go get supplies and groceries. And I thought I was 2 guys fighting in, saddle coats or something. I get down there, and it's a 6-foot-tall condor.
Huh.
With white feathers. It wasn't downy, white 12-inch feathers around that. I looked him right in the eye, big gold eyes, bigger than a silver dollar. The irises were like a Roosevelt dime size, and it looked like a big carrion eater. I don't know, I'd say from 10,000 years ago when all animals, big, the saber-toothed kitties and mastodons and woolly mammoths and such. And he had white circle feathers with a white bullseye under each wing. And this was midday, around 11 or 12, noontime, and down slope winds, and he was eating a javelina, roughly 24 inches long.
Yeah. These are some powerful encounters, aren't they?
Yeah, and there's a Singwa. I live in a Singwa, 40 private acres in a Singwa area, and they were in this Singua. They were in this area roughly 6,000 years ago, plus or minus 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And I watched them fly over the ridge, which is a mile and a half to the southeast. And so me, myself, and I saw them from another point of view. So complete triangle, I think I've located its nesting area. So I'm gearing up to go look. I can't get anybody to go with me, so me and the Jack Russell will go.
Well, I hope you do get out there, and I hope you do. You'll give us a call back and let us know what happened.
Well, I most certainly will. And some friends at the U of A in Tucson said that if I bring in an eggshell and or a feather, they possibly might tell me to come on. And it was not California condor, and I don't believe it was an Andean condor, although that could occur from the winds.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, of course, what it is will have to be determined, but I hope you get up there, and I hope you make it back, and if you do, come back on, tell us your story.
I sure will, and once again, thank you and your compadres for letting me come into your living room.
Hey, much obliged, Bang. Thank you so much for calling in. And away we go. Well, let's try to sneak one more in real quick. I just can't help myself. Wild card line. Let's go with Sharon from Missouri. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, I'm going to make this real quick.
Okay.
10 years ago, I was living in Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay.
I worked a second shift. I was a supervisor. I'm going home about 1:45 at night. And on Fish Hatchery Road, there's 2 lanes going south, 2 lanes going north. And there is a very big train crossing
Just
there.
about 30 seconds left.
Okay, about all of a sudden, the lights go off, the bell's playing, the bar comes down. There's a guy coming the other direction, and we're listening, we're hearing this train. I look down the track, there's no light one way. I look down the track the other way, there's no light, but the sound of the train is coming. This train...
We have literally 20 seconds.
Okay.
Can you fit it in?
There was the train...
You know what? I don't think we're going to get there. We'll have to save that for next Open Lines. My name is Rob Simone, and it has been a pleasure to fill in once again here. My thanks to the entire Coast to Coast family and Thomas P. Fusco for coming in and joining us. I'll see you next time right here on Coast to Coast AM.